Okay, and now it's time for some weekend picks. We got a couple of fights happening tomorrow, two more significant than others, and the two that have my attention is the Guillermo Rigondeaux return to the ring. Guillermo Rigondeaux versus Giovanni Delgado. This is going to be Rigo's first fight since losing to Vasyl Lomachenko over a year ago. This is going to be his first fight since that loss, and this is going to be his first fight under the PBC banner. Now, we all know what kind of fight this is. This is a tune-up fight. This fight with Giovanni Delgado is intended to give Guillermo Rigondeaux the opportunity to shake off the cobwebs, shake off the ring rust, and get back in the swing of things. It being that, Giovanni Delgado, this is not a high-level guy by any stretch of the imagination. He's coming off of 4 consecutive losses, 8 total throughout his career.
4 of them by knockout.
So, it's pretty obvious. The writing is on the wall, and we can all see what kind of opponent this is. This is very much a tune-up fight for Guillermo Rigondeaux, but it's a necessary evil for him. Because 1, he's not a young guy. Guillermo Rigondeaux is no spring chicken. And 2, it's been well over a year since he last had a fight. And his last fight, he was overwhelmed by Vasyl Lomachenko. So, I understand why he's being matched against a guy like this. And there are a few particulars associated with this tune-up fight, what is so obviously a tune-up fight. There are a few particulars associated with this tune-up that you want to be mindful of if you're trying to forecast the outcome. 1 is that this fight is not a bantamweight contest. It's not at 122. It's at 126. And that climb might take something off of Rigo's punch. At 122, Rigo is a devastating counter-puncher, but that's at 122. This fight is at 126. It's at 126, and it's been well over a year since Rigo has fought anyone. So he's going to have some considerable cobwebs to shake off, and just as well, his timing might actually be a little bit off. And 2, it being that this is a tune-up fight, this Delgado guy, he's not in there simply to get knocked the fuck out in the first round, you understand? The purpose of this fight is for Rigo to get the rounds in, to shake off the cobwebs, to put certain things to use that he hasn't put to use in a while. So getting the guy out of there early would defeat the purpose. I'm of the opinion that Rigo might go as far as carrying this guy, and this one might actually go to the cards, because that's what the guy's in there for. He's in there so that Rigo can get these rounds in and get back in the swing of things. He's not necessarily in there for Rigo to knock him the fuck out.
That's not the point.
And 2, this thing is an 8-rounder. It's an 8-round fight. It's not a 10-round fight. It's not a 12-round fight. It's an 8-round fight. So it's conceivable to me that Rigo, to get the rounds in, to shake off the cobwebs, get rid of that ring rust, he might actually carry this guy. So, in tomorrow's comeback fight for Guillermo Rigondeaux, I'm of the opinion that this thing is going to go to the cards, and we may see some rustiness from Rigo. I mean, it's conceivable, given everything that's happened, that he might not look exactly the same as we remembered him when he was, in his heyday, in his winning ways or whatever. But he may not look exactly the same as we remember him. He may look rusty. He may even struggle at times. But I do think that he's got enough to beat this guy. I do think he's got enough to win on points against Giovanni Delgado. So for tomorrow's tune-up fight for Rigo, I'm going with Rigo by way of a points decision. And next is the IBF Super Middleweight title fight between Caleb Plant and reigning champion Jose Uzcategui. Tough fight to call. Tough fight to call. And I've discussed the fight in the past, how, Caleb Plant,
skillful guy.
He does have the appearance of a pure boxer, but he doesn't quite look like a finished product yet. That's saying that he could go from being a pure boxer to more of a boxer puncher. The guy's only got 17 professional fights, so there's plenty of room for growth. But at least based on what we've seen so far, Caleb Plant does have the appearance and the characteristics of a pure boxer. Very defensively minded, doesn't throw very many combinations. He's more of a pot shot guy, stick and move kind of guy. Whereas Jose Uzcategui, he's a little bit further along in his career. He's had a bit more experiences against world-level opponents. And he does appear like a more finished product, that if you look at Jose Uzcategui, you know that what you're looking at is a pressure fighter. A guy who doesn't want to give up any ground. He doesn't want to have to go backwards. He wants to come forwards, and he wants to throw a lot of punches. He wants to hurt a guy. He wants to land bombs. He has the appearance of a very busy fighter. So what usually happens when you mix a pure boxer with a pressure fighter, not to be confused with a boxer puncher with a pressure fighter, but what usually happens when you get a pure boxer in the ring with a pressure fighter, that pure boxer tends to struggle. And it's due to the volume punching of the pressure fighter that The pure boxer is spending so much time on the defensive, he doesn't have enough time to mount an offense because he doesn't want to give up any openings to the pressure fighter. And, you know, it's a tough call because maybe we haven't even seen the best of Caleb Plant. Maybe he rises to the occasion tomorrow, but we're going off of what we've seen so far, and based on what we've seen so far, Caleb Plant has the look of a pure boxer, and if history is any indicator of things to come, the pure boxer against the pressure fighter, yeah, they do tend to struggle. You cannot afford to be economic with this guy. You're going to have to do something to keep this guy off. And it just so happens that, you know, Caleb Plant, for all his virtues, all his defensive prowess and movement, he's really not a big puncher. 17 professional fights, 17 professional wins, but only 10 knockouts. And this is the first credible threat that he's going to be facing. This is the first credible threat that he's going to be squaring off against. You think about Caleb's implementation, that he likes to be a moving target. He's moving around that ring, trying not to give up any advantages to the other guy, but as a result of that, he doesn't get to sit on his punches. That's not what he does. Thus, there's not a lot on those punches. There may not be enough to keep Jose Uzcategui off as he's coming forward. And as he's coming forward, he's not just throwing bolo punches. This guy's throwing combinations. This guy's throwing shots upstairs, downstairs. He's trying to hit you with everything but the kitchen sink. So, you know, throwing one shot at a time or just, you know, flicking that jab, trying to pepper him with it, that may not be enough to keep him off. You know, in my previous video regarding this particular fight, I talked about not only the stylistic matchup, how certain styles fare against other styles, but how the level at which a fighter operates with that style is also rudimentary. It's also a determining factor that a guy who may be at a stylistic disadvantage can still secure the win, provided that he's operating at a higher level than the other guy. That the A+ pure boxer can beat the B+ pressure fighter, even though that B+ pressure fighter does have a stylistic advantage. But if that pure boxer is an A+ level pure boxer, he can still win that fight. He might struggle in spots, but he can still win that fight because he's operating at a higher level. But in the case of Caleb Plant, well, the level at which you're operating, the most world level guy you fought so far was Porky Medina. And that's not a criticism, that is just an observation. I'm not criticizing him for fighting Porky Medina. I'm saying that that's the most world level guy he's fought so far. So if there's more to him, it has yet to be revealed, because the most world level guy you fought was Porky Medina. This is a more considerable threat to you than Porky Medina. The level that you've been operating, the level at which you've been operating so far, does not reveal enough to me that I'm confident that you can pry that belt away from Jose Uzcategui. I think that Caleb Plant's defensive prowess may be enough to offset some of Jose Uzcategui's aggression, but not all of it. And at minimum, in the eyes of the judges, Jose is still going to seem like the busier guy, the guy who's coming forward, throwing more punches, and perhaps even landing more punches.
Than Caleb.
Maybe not by a landslide, but because the guy's throwing more than Caleb, Caleb who wants to be economic, Caleb who wants to minimize the amount of openings that he gives Jose, in the eyes of the judges, Jose might still look like the busier fighter, and you know what? He is the reigning champion. In most instances where the fight is kind of close,
if it's close,
the reigning champion usually gets the nod. I try to picture how this fight is going to play out based on how both of these guys operate, and I see a situation to where Caleb Plant is going to be on the move. He's going to be on the go, and he's going to try to maintain distance between himself and Jose Uzcategui. Jose Uzcategui wants to keep this fight in close quarters, keep this fight in the pocket, and I think that Caleb knows that, and he's going to try to keep the fight out of the pocket, keep Jose on the outside of his jab, and constantly stick and move. The thing is, well, you know, sticking and moving, some of those shots are going to get through, some of them aren't, but Jose's going to have the appearance of the busier fighter, the guy who's pressing the action. And if by some chance, you know, Jose manages to pin Caleb down, Caleb is going to angle that upper body, move that head to get under and around Jose's shots. But in terms of actually engaging Jose in the pocket, I don't see that happening. I don't see Caleb mixing it up with Jose.
Trading with him.
Because Caleb himself acknowledged that Jose Uzcategui's got a beard on him. You know, this is a guy that can take a shot. You mix it up with this guy in the pocket, and he can take what you've got.
Then throw something back.
Caleb not really being the biggest puncher, I don't imagine that he's going to, have the fight in the pocket, keep the fight in the pocket, trying to get this guy's respect. Not when he knows that this guy's got a chin. I imagine that Caleb is going to be trying to keep this fight on the move, trying to keep this fight on the go, and that's going to come at the cost of his offense, that you're simply not doing enough. You're hanging in there, but you're not doing enough. I'd sooner believe that this fight ends in a draw than Caleb is going to win that belt. I'd sooner believe that, at least based on what we've seen. If Caleb Plant is in fact better than what we think he is, he hasn't had the opportunity to show that yet. The opportunity is coming in tomorrow night. But based on what we've seen so far, no, he has not won my trust yet. So, at minimum, if this thing ends in a draw, Jose Uzcategui keeps his belt. But I'm going to go ahead and say that I think Jose Uzcategui is going to win a close points decision. Understand that there aren't very many nuances to Jose Uzcategui's game. It's just that he's got a particular style that can trouble Caleb. And Jose, he does have a chin, and he is the bigger puncher in the ring. He's the guy who really stands a chance of hurting the other guy. And I think Caleb knows that, and I think that Caleb, knowing that, he won't engage him. He'll try to limit the amount of exchanges that he gets into. He'll try to be economic and keep those windows of opportunity closed. But I reiterate, that may come at the cost of his output, come at the cost of his offense, that, you know what, you're staying out of the way of shots, but you're not doing enough to take this fight from Jose Uzcategui. So, my prediction is I'm going to go ahead and pick Jose Uzcategui to win what could be a very close points decision. I think he may retain that belt tomorrow night. And, let's just put it this way. That's my prediction. But I'll tell you, Caleb Plant's a talented fighter, and if he does rise to the occasion, and he does prove me wrong, then more power to him. Lord knows that his aspirations don't rise and fall based on predictions on YouTube. So if he's better than what we think he is, we'll find out. But like I said, based on what I've seen, I'm going to go ahead with Jose Uzcategui by way of a decision. And in other news, Golden Boy CEO Oscar De La Hoya has directed President Eric Gomez of Golden Boy Promotions to enter immediate negotiations for a Canelo Alvarez versus Gennady Golovkin rubber match. Canelo Alvarez is currently scheduled to be returning to the ring on May 4th, Cinco de Mayo weekend, and it's conceivable that the fight with Golovkin could go down on that date. At minimum, it is a possibility. And I'm going to tell you something. Ever since the last fight, we ain't heard much from Gennady Golovkin. We haven't heard much, and there's a lot of room for speculation, and that's what people have been doing. They've been speculating because he's a network free agent, because he's receiving so many offers from so many different platforms. PBC's offer reportedly being the strongest to get Golovkin on their side of the street. But, in spite of all these reports, we haven't heard much from the man himself. We've heard rumors saying that his relationship with Tom Loeffler and that promotional company, that's over with. Rumors which Tom Loeffler himself dispelled. He cited shoddy journalism, that these guys shouldn't be publishing those kinds of stories without a direct quote from the man himself, Gennady Golovkin. So until further notice, I guess it's safe to assume that Golovkin's relationship with Tom Loeffler is still intact, at least according to Tom Loeffler, until we hear something from Gennady Golovkin. And considering this news, it's pretty predictable, because if you're Gennady Golovkin, what are you going to do? Chase down the belts that you used to hold for less money than you'd make in a Canelo Alvarez rubber match?
Yeah, man.
That's saying that, look, you could go fight Jacobs in a rematch for the IBF title you used to hold. You could go over there and fight Andre for the WBO title that you never held. If you were interested in ever holding that title,
Demetrius got it.
You'd have to fight Andre for it. Those kinds of fights are on the table, and those guys would be receptive to those fights. But neither one of them fights are of the same value as a Canelo rubber match. That's just the reality of it. I can tell you that there are other fights out there that have been rumored that were possibilities. At minimum, they were possibilities. There are other fights out there that I find more intriguing than this fight, like the prospect of Golovkin going up to 168 pounds and fighting Caleb Smith for the Ring Magazine and WBA title. I'm actually more intrigued by the prospect of that fight than this fight. There was also rumors earlier this week about a potential Billy Joe Saunders fight. No belt at all on the line, though. That's the thing. No belt for Golovkin to win. But there were rumors of a fight like that, and I'm honestly more intrigued by that than the prospect of a Canelo rubber match. Nevertheless, in spite of what intrigues me, I know that neither one of those fights is of the same value as a Canelo fight. That's just the reality of it. And it being that the fight has so much value tacked onto it, in spite of the controversy, in spite of everything that happened, that's the biggest bang for your buck fight. At this stage in Golovkin's career, I don't think he's fighting for legacy so much as he's fighting for his retirement fund. And if that's the case, the Canelo fight would be the one you go with. It's predictable. You know, boxing fans often romanticize just what fighters are fighting for, and they lose sight of the fact that at the end of the day, they are prize fighters. And if you're a Gennady Golovkin, you're in your late 30s, you know, you've had all these trials and tribulations for a good portion of your career, at this stage, it's really not about belts anymore. Maybe at some point it was, and maybe your two goals, to participate in a massive fight while at the same time campaigning to become an undisputed champion, maybe at one point in your career, those two goals actually coalesced. But at this stage, it's really not about the belts anymore. Right now, it's about, you know, funding your retirement fund. If you really want to get the most money before you call it a career, then yeah, the Canelo fight would be the fight you go with. I know it's predictable. I know some people might be more excited about other fights than this one, but you know, that's just the reality of it. That the reasons for him going with a Canelo fight would be obvious to anyone. And I'm not telling you guys that I'm okay with it, or I'm not telling you guys that you should be okay with it. I'm just saying that if that's what he decided to do, we'd all know what the reason was. The real reason. You know, right now what I'm really thinking is, how is the WBC going to make this make sense? Because you know that they're going to want to sanction this fight because they want sanctioning fees. They're going to want to sanction this fight for the WBC title that Canelo holds. Problem is, you already ordered Gennady Golovkin to fight Jermall Charlo. And that was a pretty stupid fucking mandate. I said that many times, that why are you ordering Golovkin to fight Charlo when Golovkin doesn't even have a belt for Charlo to win? Charlo had a title shot. But what are you going to do now? You're going to give Gennady Golovkin the title shot that you were supposed to give Jermall Charlo? Fuck me.